Welcome to the deep dive. And hey, thanks to you, our listener, for sending over this, well, frankly, incredible stack of material. We're going to skip the usual preamble today and just jump right in.
Good plan.
Because we're diving into something that's definitely complex, really insightful, but also sometimes, well, hilariously direct. Almost impatient, you could say.
Yes, that's a fair assessment. We are definitely looking at a pivotal early point in a body of work that really shook things up in metaphysical thinking.
So specifically?
Specifically, we are digging into Session 8 of the Early Sessions, Book 1 of the Seth material. This one was recorded way back on Sunday, December 15th, 1963 at 9 p.m.
1963, wow.
And this early session is just, it's a goldmine, both logistically and conceptually. It sets up the ground rules for contact, but it also drops in terms that become absolutely foundational for the whole Seth cosmology.
Okay, but before we get into the weird and wonderful bits, we should probably do the necessary stuff.
Right, the housekeeping.
Exactly. So first, huge credit to the Seth material itself and to the publisher, New Awareness Network, for making this available.
Absolutely essential.
And also, just to be clear, this discussion, this deep dive, it's based purely on this educational source material. We're putting it out free of charge on all the major platforms, really just for educational purposes.
And hopefully to encourage you, the listener, to go check out the Early Sessions Book 1 for yourself. It's worth it.
Totally. So what's our mission today then? What are we trying to pull out of this session?
Well, I think we need to go beyond just, summarizing what happened. We really want to extract the key insights from this Q&A format they were using. Focusing really intensely on the mechanics of psychic reality, as Seth describes it, and this idea of entity structure. So we'll look at the rules for communication he lays down, analyze this really quite chilling case study of an apparition.
Oh, I remember reading about that one, yeah.
Right, and clarify one of the absolute core concepts in the entire material, this idea of the fragment.
Okay, let's do it. Session 8 kicks off with, logistics, basically, setting the rules for how these sessions are even going to work. It has this kind of almost funny domestic vibe to it,
Yeah.
Like setting house rules for talking to the other side.
Yeah, exactly. And the very first thing they address is observers. Like, can other people come and watch these sessions?
Right. Can we bring friends?
And Seth's answer immediately sets up this clear boundary. It's almost protective, around the psychic energy they're trying to create.
He didn't say no outright, though, did he? It was conditional.
Correct. The rule for observers was, and I quote, "Yes, but observers should remain silent." And here's the key part. No one should sit in who is not of same mind yet.
Of same mind yet. What do you think that really means? It's more than just being polite, right?
Oh, definitely. It's way more than a social filter. I think it speaks directly to the delicate energy field needed for this kind of deep mediumship.
So if someone's sitting there thinking, this is all nonsense.
Exactly. If the observer is skeptical or dismissive or maybe even just, scared, their internal state could actually disrupt the psychic coherence that Jane Roberts and Rob Butts were working so hard to build. It's like you need a unified intention in the room.
It really makes you think, doesn't it? The idea of spiritually vetting your seance guests. Like, have you done your homework? Are you open to this? Otherwise, you might actually block the connection.
Precisely. And that need for a certain mindset, it quickly extends to the type of information they could ask for. Rob, understandably, asked if Seth would answer an occasional question for a friend, like a sort of cosmic Dear Abby.
Yeah, can you ask Seth about my job prospect?
Right. And that's where we get that first hint of Seth's dignity, I guess you could call it. He gently but firmly pushes back against being treated like a trivia machine.
What did he say exactly?
He said, "Sometimes I am more than a question and answer service, however."
That's a pretty clear signal.
It's a crucial warning, especially early on. He's basically saying, look, I'm here to talk about the nature of reality, existence, consciousness, not to solve your neighbor's relationship drama or find lost keys. It reinforces the seriousness of what they were doing.
Okay, so setting boundaries makes sense. But then comes the really big moment, conceptually speaking. Rob Butts asks about this specific word they'd heard. Fragment.
Right. He points out that in all their reading on psychic stuff, they'd never seen the word used in just the way you employ it. So he asks, flat out, is that an original term or a use with you?
And Seth's reply.
Clear as bell. That is an original term with me, as far as I know.
Wow. So right there in Session 8, a core piece of this whole cosmology is basically invented, or at least named.
Exactly. A new word for a new paradigm.
But why? Why invent fragment? Why not just use existing terms like, I don't know, past personality or subpersonality? They were dealing with reincarnation ideas, right?
They were, but Seth's model seems to go beyond that, or at least frame it differently. Past personality kind of implies a linear sequence, right? First this life, then that life.
Yeah, chronological.
But fragment, that suggests something different. It suggests a part that's operating kind of simultaneously, maybe autonomously, within a much larger non-chronological structure, the entity.
Okay.
Think about it like Freudian concepts, ego, superego, or even Jung's archetypes. Those are usually seen as parts of you within this lifetime. Seth needed a term for a conscious center that's part of your greater whole, the entity, but also has its own complete independent existence.
So a fragment isn't just a memory trace. It's like a self-contained unit of consciousness.
That seems to be the idea. And that term, fragment, becomes the absolute bedrock for understanding this larger multidimensional self he talks about later.
Okay, that's a really important distinction. Now, let's shift back to the human element here. Jane Roberts, the medium, the notes show she was having some real struggles, some reservations.
Yeah, she was noting that she often receives my messages before they are spelled out on the Ouija board, sometimes even before Rug finished asking the question.
And this wasn't making her feel more connected, it was making her uncomfortable.
Exactly. It made her reserved about the whole contact because she was getting the answer directly in her mind before the pointer moved.
And Seth actually addressed why this was unsettling for her, right?
He did, and his explanation is brilliant psychology, really. He says, a board is neutral, messages in own mind are not.
That's key.
Think about it. Her conscious mind is worried, am I just making all this up? If the answer pops straight into her head, how does she know it's genuinely from Seth and not just her own subconscious or wishful thinking?
Right. The board.
The board, the physical pointer moving seemingly on its own across the letters, that acts as an external verifiable thing. It's objective or feels objective. It provides reassurance that the source is genuinely outside of her own head.
That's fascinating. It shows how important the process of mediumship can be, not just the message. The medium needs that check, that balance, especially early on, to build trust.
Totally. And Seth acknowledges this dynamic. He actually says that Jane's caution and Rob's enthusiasm provide an excellent balance for the whole process.
So skepticism isn't bad.
Not at all. It suggests that critical thinking and open acceptance aren't enemies here. You need both. The caution keeps it grounded. The enthusiasm keeps the channel open. It's a partnership.
Okay, so once the rules were kind of laid out and Jane's own psychic process was addressed, Session 8 shifts gears and becomes this sort of rapid-fire Q&A section, almost like Seth was doing quick credibility checks.
Yeah, it feels a bit like that, spiritual speed dating, as you said earlier. And these quick hits are really important because if Seth can pull out specific, verifiable details from the past, it lends weight to the stuff he says about, the future or these bigger metaphysical ideas.
But what do they ask first?
They jumped straight into asking about Seth's claimed past life as this guy, Frank Watts.
And the specific question was?
Seth, when you were incarnated on Earth as Frank Watts, did you know a Trevor Watts?
Okay, pretty direct.
And the answer came back just as directly, identifying a family connection. Sister older than Frank.
Just sister.
No, he gave more. He provided these incredibly specific, potentially verifiable details about someone Rob and Jane likely didn't know personally. He said Trevor Watts died in 1941 at the age of 54.
Wow. Dates, ages.
Yeah.
That's not vague stuff. That's census-level detail.
Exactly. And pulling out things like 1941, age 54, that kind of specificity is what really established the credibility of the Seth material for many people early on. It suggests access to information beyond normal conscious awareness. It's still the stuff that makes skeptics scratch their heads.
And then they ask something a bit more personal, right? About the relationship.
Yes. The follow-up question was wonderfully human. Rob asked, how did Frank and Trevor get along as brother and sister?
Okay, moment of truth. Cosmic insights into sibling dynamics.
And the profound answer from the entity spanning lifetimes. All right, that's it.
That's it. Just, all right, no big family drama, no epic tale of love or hate. Just, they got along okay.
There's something weirdly believable about that, isn't there? The sheer normality of it.
I think so, too. Sometimes the most convincing evidence is the lack of drama. It was just, all right.
Okay, so moving from past lives to present practice. Rob mentioned he'd been trying to receive answers psychically without the board.
Yeah, and he was worried about accuracy. Specifically, there was a previous prediction that Jane's novel would be rejected by Fawcett Publishers, and Rob thought that prediction had turned out to be wrong. He was questioning the process.
And this is where Seth gives some pretty practical advice on psychic development, doesn't he?
He really does. He validates the practice itself, saying,
Right.
yes, good practice. But
Yeah.
then he adds the crucial caveat. However, you must expect some errors.
So mistakes are part of the deal. Exactly. It's a really realistic take. If you're trying to develop intuition, pushing those boundaries, you have to accept that you won't be right 100% of the time. It takes the pressure off and encourages just sticking with the practice. Very sensible advice for anyone exploring this stuff.
And naturally, after talking about errors, they had to ask about the novel again. Jane's book, To Hear a Golfin.
Of course. Human concerns always creep back in. Despite the talk of errors, Seth's prediction for the novel was still positive. He said, yes, spring, and also book sell.
So, good news.
Yeah.
But did he say who would publish it?
Ah, that's where he pulled back. When asked who would publish it, Seth immediately distanced himself from any claim of knowing absolutely everything. He stated quite clearly, I don't know everything. Many variants.
Many variants.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
It's critical, I think. It reinforces that even an entity like Seth seems to operate within a field of probabilities, not fixed certainties. He can see the likely path, the strong potential for success, but the actual outcome, the specific publisher, gets tangled up in all the variants, human choices, free will, shifting circumstances.
Yeah, if he claimed to know every single detail, it might actually feel less credible.
Right. Admitting limitations paradoxically adds authenticity. He's not claiming to be God, just to have a broader perspective.
Okay, this feels like the real meat of Session 8. We need to spend some serious time here, because this discussion about fragments and the entity, it's not just theory, is it? It feels like the blueprint for how Seth sees reality and us within it.
Absolutely. This is foundational stuff, and the way it's introduced is through this really specific and frankly quite chilling personal anecdote.
This is the Bill McDonald story.
That's the one. Bill McDonald, back in 1961, apparently saw an apparition in his bedroom in Niagara Falls. He saw a girl sitting in a rocking chair.
Okay, classic ghost story setup. Girl in a rocking chair. Definitely spooky.
Right. You expect the explanation to be, residual haunting or earthbound spirit. But Seth's diagnosis is way stranger and much more personal.
What did he say it was?
He said it was not a ghost, not some separate spirit. It was, and this is the quote, a fragment of his own entity, a past personality regaining momentary independence on visual plane.
Whoa. Hold on. A fragment of his own entity. A past personality of his, manifesting visually.
Exactly. And Seth adds that this kind of thing is rare, saying, sometimes a lapse occurs of this type.
Regaining momentary independence on visual plane. That phrase alone. It implies our visual reality isn't as solid or linear as we think. Parts of our own past selves can somehow pop back in.
That's the implication. And the word lapse is interesting, too. A lapse suggests a temporary breakdown in the normal organization, doesn't it?
Yeah, like something slipped through the crack.
Right. So the idea might be that the entity, this larger self, is normally managing all its fragments, all its past and parallel lives subconsciously. But maybe sometimes due to intense emotion or a specific location's energy or some psychic pressure point, that management system falters for a second.
And a fragment gets loose.
And that fragment, which, remember, according to this model, exists now, not just back then, gains enough energy or autonomy to briefly project itself into our three-dimensional world. It's less like watching a replay and more like a momentary bleed through from another reality stream.
Okay, mine's slightly blown. So what about the fragment itself? Does it know it's a fragment? Does it know Bill McDonald is its future self or organizing principle watching it?
Seth is very clear on this. He says fragments exist with their own individual consciousnesses. They're fully formed, independent points of view, living out their own reality.
So they're conscious.
Yes, but, and this is crucial, they are not aware of the entity itself.
Ah, so just like us, maybe. We're fragments of our entities, but most of us spend our lives totally unaware of that larger connection.
Precisely. The fragment is just living its life, experiencing its reality from its own perspective. It doesn't perceive itself as a part of something bigger.
So how did that moment feel for the fragment? When Bill saw the girl in the chair, what did the girl fragment experience? Did she see Bill?
According to Seth, The fragment experienced Bill's presence, that momentary intersection, as a dream.
As a dream.
Yeah. Seth sums up this mutual lack of recognition perfectly. As Bill saw and did not recognize, the fragment saw and did not recognize.
So Bill saw an inexplicable apparition. The fragment saw what? Like a weird shadow, a fleeting image in her reality that she probably dismissed as just a strange dream figure.
That seems to be exactly the idea. Bill was an anomaly in her world, just as she was in his. Neither recognized the other as fundamentally connected to themselves.
Wow. Okay, that really reframes the whole idea of ghosts or apparitions.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes maybe you're just seeing yourself.
Yeah.
Or a piece of yourself.
A piece of your larger self, yeah. Now, to understand how this whole system works, the entity and all its fragments, Seth introduces a really powerful analogy. He connects it to psychology.
This is the superego analogy.
That's the one. He says the entity, the core self that generates all these fragments, could be compared to a superego as far as its own fragments are concerned.
Okay, using superego, that immediately makes you think of Freud, right? The conscience, guilt, internalized rules. Is that what he means?
It's a bit tricky. We have to be careful not to map it one-to-one onto the Freudian concept. I think Seth is using superego here to point towards the organizational function, the managing aspect, which in Freud's model often operates unconsciously, internalizing standards and structures.
So the entity acts like a manager, organizing all his parts.
Yes, but crucially, Seth emphasizes this operation is subconscious, or without conscious direction. This is key. The entity isn't sitting there consciously thinking, okay, Jane Roberts fragment, today you will. Instead, it sets up the structure, gives these fragments independent life, and then, this is the line that always gets me, more or less forgets them.
Hang on. Forgets them. The entity forgets about us. That sounds neglectful. Doesn't that completely contradict the whole New Age idea of a loving higher self constantly guiding us?
It certainly challenges the simplistic version of that idea. And I think that apparent contradiction is exactly what forces us to think deeper. When Seth says forgets, I don't think he means neglect in the human sense. I think he means the entity doesn't consciously micromanage the fragment's daily life.
Okay.
The management is happening at a deeper, subconscious, systemic level, like an operating system running in the background. It provides the energy, the structure, the fundamental reality, but then grants the fragment full autonomy within that reality to make its own choices, learn its own lessons.
So the forgetting is more like trusting the system to run itself.
Perhaps. Or simply that the entity's attention operates on a scale so vast, dealing with countless realities simultaneously, that conscious focus on one specific fragment's moment-to-moment experience isn't how it works.
And he clarifies this lack of direct control with another analogy, right? Something about the body.
Yes, the analogy of internal biological functions. He points out how difficult, how impossible it is for our conscious mind to control things that run automatically. He says, it's as impossible for the entity to control fragment personalities as for the conscious mind to be aware or control its own heartbeat.
Ah, okay. That makes it clear. You don't think your heart into beating. You don't consciously direct digestion. Those systems run on their own, managed by your body's deeper intelligence.
Precisely. And the entity's relationship to its fragments is similar, according to this model. It's foundational, automatic, providing the life force and parameters, but not interfering with the local conscious choices of the fragment.
Okay. But the implication of all this, that we're essentially autonomous fragments, potentially surrounded by other fragments of ourselves, that leads Rob Butts to ask a pretty stunning question.
Yeah, the logical, slightly terrifying next step. Then it's possible to walk down the street and meet a fragment of yourself.
And Seth's answer, no hesitation.
None at all. Just a simple, almost casual affirmation, of course.
Of course. Just like that. That single phrase just blows up the idea of a single isolated self, doesn't it?
Completely. It suggests reality is porous. Every person you meet, every situation you encounter could potentially be resonating with some other aspect of your own vast, multidimensional identity, past lives, parallel lives, future potentials even. We're basically walking through a hall of mirrors reflecting different facets of our greater being.
Okay, deep breath. And it doesn't stop with past personalities, does it? The definition of fragment gets even broader.
Right. Seth throws another conceptual grenade by stating even thoughts, for instance, are fragments, though on a different plane.
Thoughts are fragments. So my random thought about needing milk is a fragment.
According to this, yes. It's a unit of consciousness, albeit on a different level than a fully incarnated personality. It's like a smaller, more ephemeral fragment.
But what does that mean, practically?
Well, Seth adds the crucial detail. These thought fragments must be translated into physical reality.
Translated, like they're trying to manifest.
Exactly. It implies that every thought we generate isn't just neutral background noise. It's an actual energetic seed, a tiny conscious entity in its own right, seeking expression, seeking to become physically real.
So if you keep thinking the same thought over and over,
you give that thought fragment energy, you give it momentum. Enough momentum, and it achieves the translation into your physical experience as circumstances, events, physical conditions, whatever.
Okay, that puts a huge amount of responsibility back on us, doesn't it? Our mental activity isn't just commentary. It's active creation. We're constantly generating these little fragments that are trying to build our reality.
That's the profound implication. If you let fragments of fear or anger or limitations circulate constantly in your mind, you are, according to this model, actively energizing them and inviting their translation into your life.
So the thought fragment, once you create it, it has its own life, its own drive to manifest.
It seems so. It has its own trajectory. It really shifts the locus of control for our reality entirely inward, into our own consciousness, into the kinds of thought fragments we choose to entertain and energize. Your mind becomes the workshop where your reality is forged.
All right, after that incredibly deep dive into the nature of self and thought, Session 8 takes another sharp turn. We get this rapid-fire round of questions covering everything from lost continents to art sales.
Yeah, the gears shift dramatically, and this section is great because it really shows Seth's personality, his priorities, and yeah, his occasional impatience with what he seems to consider less important lines of inquiry.
First up, ancient geography. They asked about lost worlds, starting with the big one, Atlantis.
And Seth confirms it. Yes. But he immediately contextualizes it, saying it was one of many that came and vanished. So not necessarily unique, just part of a larger cycle.
But then things get weird. Jane spontaneously channels a name they didn't know, Mesophania.
Right. A completely new lost land just pops out. Rob tries to clarify, asks if it's a lost country like Atlantis. Seth confirms yes.
But Rob, being the careful researcher, starts wondering, could they be mishearing? He asks, Seth, are we confusing Mesophania with Mesopotamia? You know, the actual historical region?
And this is where we get that classic moment of Seth seeming utterly uninterested. His response is priceless, now do I know.
It's like cosmic sass.
Totally. And Jane's notes confirm this feeling. She wrote, she distinctly felt that Seth was largely uninterested in this exchange. He's basically saying, look, I'm trying to explain the structure of consciousness here, and you're asking me to proofread ancient geography. Does it really matter if you confuse these two names?
It's a great reality check. His focus is clearly metaphysical, not historical trivia.
Yeah. Exactly. It's a necessary redirection, reminding them and us what the core purpose of these communications is.
Okay, so from lost worlds to, well, something very down to earth, art marketing. Rob Butts was an artist, right?
He was, and he asked Seth for advice about selling an oil sketch, apparently a cowboy head, and also a casein painting.
So what was the interdimensional art marketing secret?
Surprisingly practical, Seth basically told him to trust his own expertise. Send it and see. You have a knowledge in the field. Use it.
No magic formula then. Just do the work you already know how to do.
Pretty much. Use your existing skills and networks. Don't rely on psychic predictions for basic business steps. It's very grounded advice.
But Rob couldn't resist pushing for a prediction, could he? Like anyone would, he asked. Will I make a sale?
And that's when Seth delivers that absolutely classic line, the perfect shutdown for trying to turn him into a fortune teller. Now cut that out.
Love it. Just cut that out.
It's firm, but as Jane noted, it felt more amused than angry. Still, it's a clear message. Focus on the action, on using your knowledge, not on demanding guarantees about the future outcome. Put the energy into the doing, not the worrying.
Did he give any prediction in the end, though?
He did, actually. After the little rebuke, he sort of reluctantly conceded, I think so. Like, okay, fine, you'll probably sell it, now can we move on?
Huh. Okay, fair enough. Which brings us to the very last bit of Session 8, the final question, and the answer that sets up a huge cliffhanger for the next session.
Right. Rob asks Jane to spontaneously dictate an answer to the question, what is chlorophyll? You know, the green stuff in plants.
Okay, seems like a random science question. What did Jane channel?
She channeled something completely unexpected, something that bridges biology and consciousness in a startling way. The answer was A mental enzyme.
A mental enzyme, chlorophyll, the thing that makes photosynthesis happen.
Exactly. That single phrase, a mental enzyme, is radical. It suggests that the fundamental process that powers life on Earth, turning sunlight into energy, isn't just a chemical reaction. It's driven by, or is an expression of, some kind of mental or conscious principle.
Wow. That fundamentally reframes biology. If chlorophyll is mental, then the physical world isn't separate from consciousness. It's a direct manifestation of it, right down to the cellular level.
That's the staggering implication. It connects the inner world of mind directly to the outer world of biological function. It sets up this huge scientific mystery.
And Seth knew it was big.
Oh, yeah. He confirmed Jane's dictated answer yes, and then immediately promised more. I will go into it further next session.
Perfect cliffhanger. A great way to end a session that covered everything from seance rules and past life siblings to the very structure of the self and the nature of thought. Hashtag tag outro.
It really is an incredible density of information packed into one session, isn't it? From the practical to the profoundly abstract.
Totally. So if we try to boil down the biggest takeaways from session 8, what's the core message you think we should leave with?
For me, the absolute core is this functional description of the self. We're not these isolated, single linear beings. We're more like autonomous conscious fragments.
Operating within a larger entity.
Right, an entity that manages things subconsciously, like a biological operating system or that superego analogy Seth used. It gives us independent life, lets us run.
And these fragments,
Yeah.
our past personalities, they're not just gone. They exist and can even, apparently momentarily, pop back into our visual reality, which is, a chilling thought.
It is, and maybe the most practical and equally chilling takeaway is that our thoughts are also fragments, tiny energetic fragments constantly trying to translate themselves into our physical experience.
Which puts the responsibility for creating our reality squarely back on us, on the quality of our own consciousness.
That's how I read it. It reframes everything.
So if you want to dig into this directly, and we really hope you do, the place to go is the source material.
Definitely. Please check out the New Awareness Network website and their bookstore. It's at https://sethcenter.com/early sessions. You can find the Early Sessions Book 1 there, and, well, the rest of the incredible Seth material.
It's worth the journey, for sure. This exploration of the entity, the fragment, the mental nature of reality. Session 8 really just cracks the door open.
It absolutely does. Every single piece, the rules, the case studies, the analogies, even the seemingly off-topic bits, it all points towards this vast, interconnected, conscious universe where the boundaries we assume are solid are actually quite fluid.
Which leaves us with maybe one final thought for you to mull over, something to take with you from this deep dive.
Go on.
Okay, so if your entity, operating subconsciously like that superego, gives independent life to your past personality fragments, and if those fragments can sometimes, even rarely appear on your visual plane, then what multidimensional aspect of your own greater self might you be interacting with, maybe even projecting onto your world right now, completely without your conscious awareness?
That's a good one. What parts of yourself are you meeting out there?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Something to think about. Good night, dear friends.